Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Scott Lyons and Josh Marpet. We have exciting news about the Security Weekly webcast program. We are now partnered with ISC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attend any of our webcasts, you will receive 1 CPE credit per webcast. Register for one of our upcoming webcasts with ServiceNow, Great Horn, or Core Security, or all of them, by going to securityweekly.com. Click the webcast dropdown and select registration. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them in our on-demand library by selecting On Demand from the webcast dropdown. All right, gentlemen, let's get into some security news for the week, compliance news for the week. I got to watch that. I'm so used to security news, I forget it's compliance news also.
We are Security and Compliance Weekly.
We're the bridge. It's okay.
It's okay.
Well, and so talking about bridges, right? I mean, some of these initial articles kind of bridge together. And the first one I pulled in is, this whole article on the CCPA, because this thing's coming down the pike January and everybody's trying to figure out, am I in scope, not in scope? What do I need to prepare for? And so I pulled up this article on some of the things that you need to think about, are you in scope for CCPA? And I think it's pretty basic, right? Does your business collect personal information for anybody in the state of California? If the answer is yes, then guess what? You're bound to CCPA.
Well, as long as you're not a small company. If you're a $5 million a year company, you're not under CCPA. If you're, if you're collecting 25,000 Californians, you're not under CCPA. If you sell widgets and don't sell customer data at all, you're not under CCPA. So there are some carve-outs, I guess is the right word, for companies that are smaller or whatever.
Yeah.
So obviously gross revenues in excess of 25 million. Actually, personal information of 50,000 or more California consumers, and drives 50% or more of its annual revenues from selling consumers' personal information. So Facebook, you're in deep doo-doo.
What I want to know is who's set up to check this with businesses. Is this a self-reporting thing, or help me out here?
So here's the thing. I in terms of reporting, there's going to be everybody that there's going to be, report this company for doing this, and you're going to have customers reporting you. I'm guaranteeing you. Okay. But here's the interesting thing. What about if Facebook doesn't collect information? And what I mean by that is, what if every time that information was put into Facebook, and I'm picking on Facebook, but let's pick on somebody else. What if you create a company that collects information for selling Californians, whatever Californians buy? I have no idea. Nuts, whatever.
Car insurance.
And what's that?
Car insurance.
Fire insurance. So... Poor bastards. So you collect information from Californians, more than 50,000. You're a $50 million business, but the big part is derives 50% or more of its annual revenues from selling consumers' personal information. Can I lease it? Can I rent it? Can I grant access to it without selling it? Can you define that very carefully? Because as under GDPR, we've been talking about data laundering. We've actually created this term data laundering for what if a GDPR company collecting, analyzing, processing, blah, 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 people's information actually uses a sub-company or a sister company, air quotes, air quotes, air quotes.
A shell company.
A shell company of sorts to hold that information. And I just lease access to it from them, or I rent access. It's a SaaS company. It's a subscription to get access to that data. Now, I own the data. I mean, I'm on the board of directors of both companies. But I'm paying from one pocket to the other pocket to get access to that data. My main company, is that one under GDPR or CCPA? I think we're going to see this go to court, and I think we're going to see some fascinatingly high-paid lawyers debating this one.
Well, and that ties in a little bit to the second article where the California Attorney General rejected Safe Harbor for CCPA if you were GDPR compliant. And his rationale is along part of those lines you were just talking about, Josh. GDPR prohibits collection without express consent, but CCPA does not prohibit collection. So there's a difference. GDPR does not have the right to opt out of sale. The right to opt out is a core right of CCPA. So there are some differences in the way the definitions of these two laws are written, which is why the California Attorney General said just because you're GDPR compliant doesn't mean you're going to be CCPA because the requirements are different.
Well, I mean, you might be able to use similar compensating controls for both sets of compliance standards. That's fine. Nobody's complaining about that. What he's saying is just because you're one doesn't mean you're the other, because they're different. And I get that. That's totally valid. But the question is, for both of them and for all of these state laws that are going around, not just CCPA, but I think Wisconsin, Wyoming, Nevada. Texas had 2 of them that got overturned. Now they've got like
Nevada
4 of them.
Got a new one.
There's a dozen states that are doing CCPA light or CCPA sort of, and GDPR light or GDPR sort of. That, again, I still think we're going to see smaller companies spring up. They're going to say, give us your data. Don't sell it to us. Just give it to us. Let us have access to it. Let us strip the data out of your systems. And then we will lease the data back to you. And therefore, you're not under GDPR. You're not under CCPA. You're not under anything. We'll hold the liability of the data. And they're going to keep very little money in that company. So if the company gets breached, they'll just shut it down and start a new one. It's going to be interesting.
Interesting.
Well, also, what's coming down is that companies are now required, that companies that fall under the CCPA reg are now required to have a dedicated web page for receiving and processing requests, as well as a 1-800 toll number to do the same, right? So what they're trying to do is reach out to the masses and say, hey, if you don't want your information collected, distributed, disseminated, whatever, go to these pages. Now, what's to stop an attacker from going after either that page or the phone number itself and redirecting it for their purposes?
Wait, I'm sorry, Scott, did you say a 1-800 toll number? Because that's a 1-900 number. And a 1-900 number for a GDPR opt-out would be hilarious. Hi, would you like to opt out of GDPR?
Well, so as funny as that is, right? Let's go down this road for a hot second. Okay, let's say an attacker compromises one of those web pages where everybody's coming to say let's opt out, right? Attacker then gains credentials of people that are using that business, right? Attacker then turns around and sends all of those credentials at the business, creating a distributed denial of compliance. We said it first here, right? Well, distributed denial of compliance. Go ahead, Josh.
If I pulled the credentials, I think you've got it backwards. I think if I pull the credentials, if I like use social engineering toolkit and clone a web page and grab all the credentials from the people, then I would use it and I would steal their credit card numbers or whatever information I could get from the website. But if I pull a phone book and legally, without having to do any type of hacking in any way, shape, or form, I simply feed the entire phone book to that CCPA or GDPR opt-out page, then it's distributed denial of compliance because I've taken down your opt-out, your right of erasure page, or I'm simply overwhelming your people, which means that I'm sucking out the profit from your company because now you've got to hire 40 more people to transfer and process all of these opt-out requests.
A phone book is only one avenue on that attack, right? I mean, think about it. If you have all these people logging in to say, don't use my stuff, you know who the company's clients are, right? So either you use a phone book, you use the client list, right? Or you use other means of generating that word list and then send it at the request. You're going to cause the company to spend more money, time, and resources away from their bottom line, away from selling their product, to deal with all of the requests, no matter which avenue it is, right? To distributed denial of compliance, right?
Yeah, we set up robocalls. Go right after the 800 toll-free number. Mm-hmm. We do reverse robocalls.
Oh God! Oh, you're horrible. I hate you so much. I hate robocalls so much. They drive me nuts. I have a contact on my phone, spammer, and every time a robocall hits me, I just add it to that contact, and I must have like 500 numbers in that contact at this point.
Oh, there's a ton. There's a ton. But you just flip it. You take the phone book, you feed it, and then you dial into the 800 toll-free number. That's your denial of compliance attack because it's the robocalls all calling into your 800 number. You just bring the whole system down.
Oh my God! So you can smack robocallers and smack somebody who's trying to do an opt out at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Two
that's
birds, one
evil,
stone.
Matt, you're evil.
I know. Uh, quickly on the Canada privacy regulation. Since November 1st, 2018, the Office of Privacy Commissioner of Canada has received 680 security breach reports, which is 6 times the volume received during the same period 1 year ago. Obviously, this was related to voluntary versus mandatory breach reporting, since there is now a breach law on the books in Canada. So I'm not surprised by this stat, because that just tells me that people were only voluntarily reporting 1/6 of all the actual breaches that actually happened.
That's
Well,
normal.
what's the mean time to detection for most companies with breaches these days? 300 days, 290 days, some astronomical amount of time?
No, it's come down. No, it used to be a couple hundred. I think it's down in the hundreds of days now. It's not. I don't think it's that high anymore. Those numbers have slowly been coming down over the past few years. So I think they're still in the hundreds, but I don't think they're 200 or 300 anymore.
Well, there was a company that we just heard about getting so owned, it's not even funny. I'm not going to say the company name, please don't say it out loud, but they found the breach back at the beginning of October that stemmed from pre-2016, right? And this is a major company that a lot of systems run their backbones on, right? So that mean time to detection is critical, right? To being able to say, yes, we have a breach. No, we have it. No, we don't have a breach. And then you take that and you say, well, is the board accepting breach risk? Do we have enough E&O, right? Air and emission. Can we cover our butts with insurance, right, if we get breached? And a lot of companies can't. And that stems from either not having enough people to do the job, not the right systems haven't been installed, or there hasn't been some sort of due diligence risk assessment done on the company to understand exactly where and how they can be hit and why it matters, right? Josh, am I missing something here?
No, you've got it pretty well done. It's breaches were able to be written off as cost of doing business. Breaches were able to be hidden. But when you have mandatory reporting and when you have mandatory, a lot more visibility, I think is the best term, into how companies do business, which we now have based on all the different ways we can get information and based on the fact that they've simply come to terms with the fact that information is going to come out about them. You're going to see a lot more information, a lot more breaches come to light rather than be hidden or brushed over, if you will.
Yeah. And that's why you're seeing the 6-fold increase in data breach reports in Canada, because it's now mandatory, not voluntary.
It's interesting because I've got a question for you, Matt. If we made data breach reporting, mandatory here in the U.S., how many companies, how many breaches, percentage, number, whatever, do you think would be hidden anyway?
The state laws do require mandatory under the different breach laws across the different 50 states. I think it's all mandatory now. I don't think there's any voluntary left out there, is there?
So the definition of a breach changes from state to state. So if you have 5 records lost versus 5,000 records lost, I'm making those numbers up, sometimes it actually will fall underneath the definition of a breach. There are people that claim ignorance of their breach notification law, which they really shouldn't. If you live in a state, you should understand or work in a state or have an office in a state. But the question is also, now we've got states where, like New York, for example, if you have a New Yorker's records, even if you don't have an office there and you don't work out of there and you don't have any people there, you're not registered there, if you have a New Yorker's records in your database, you're still responsible under the New York breach notification law. So now, or in the very near future, you're going to have to know 50 different sets of laws, or 51 with Puerto Rico.
Right. Mm-hmm. And all of this would fall down to the chief data officer, right? The CDO, right? Which is another article, I'm segueing, which is another article that we have down below. And the CDO is expected to guide the organization in its ability to derive maximum value from the data available to the enterprise. So as a CDO is reporting hopefully into the CEO or the CFO, does the CDO understand the mean time to detection and breach notification laws, right? However, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and all the different privacy regulations. So they're going to have to know about GDPR. They're going to have to know about CCPA and any other variation from a privacy, because it's still data. So you've got, you have the breach laws on the books, which are 50 in the US. You've got privacy regulations, which also impact data. So that role, it gets pretty expansive and has to know a lot of stuff pretty quickly.
Especially when you start talking about SaaS software as a service, where you could have a customer, it's not like Amazon, and I'm picking on Amazon, where they ship to the US, they ship to Canada, they ship to Mexico, but they have a defined service area. If you're outside the service area, they don't have to worry about your regulations, right? If you have a digital product, a game, a piece of software, whatever, your service area could be the world. Do you have to know all of the privacy and regulatory systems for the entire world? Because as we see with GDPR and CCPA and the New York breach notification law, they're reaching outside their, if you will, service area to say you're under us if you have people from our area in your records. So you're starting to get into a very significant problem that you just are overwhelmed with regulatory bodies.
So back to our previous segment, we're going to have to look at machine learning, artificial intelligence systems to help us analyze where that data is, where it's going, is it applicable to a breach or a privacy law, and know what happens if any data gets out, who I have to notify and when. And yeah, we could do this through technology potentially, but again, somebody has to understand the problem and come up with a set of solutions that allow you to do this in an efficient way.
Well, Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
And by the way, when we do that, if I have all of the regulations in an expert system, and if I have all of the records where they are, the workflow of the records in that expert system, can the expert system also tell me, here are the risks? So now we're starting to talk about risk management and integrated risk management with all of those different, if you lose these 5 records, your risk is $1 million. If you lose these 50,000 records, your risk is $20. Because the breach notification law is much laxer there. And you'll gain more money by using 50,000 accounts rather than 5 accounts. So will these expert systems start telling me where to do business, how to do business, and what risks I incur or not incur by doing business in this way or this location? And that's an integrated risk management question, which, starts talking about the next article about the security think tank.
Yeah, and before we go there, though, for a second, because one of the specific functions of the CDO is to create new revenue streams and enable new business opportunities. If you knew that data, right, you just talked about, Josh, you could actually make determinations on where it would be better to do business and maybe not do business to grow revenue streams based on the different legal requirements in those different countries and regions.
Yes, absolutely correct. So you're now talking about expert systems driving business vision and strategy, or at least the implementation of such. So the board might say, hey, we want to go worldwide. We want to be global. We want to be a multinational. But at the executive level, they'll say, okay, well, the risk to being global is this area right here is very expensive if we have a problem. These areas, not so much. Let's do business there instead. And that's a fascinating issue. So yeah, it's interesting.
All right, now you want to hit the security think tank article quickly?
Sure. So the security think tank article in computerweekly.com is talking about how we need to move from traditional governance, risk, and compliance, your standard GRC stuff, to integrated risk management. We've got to take in information from across an organization to make better strategic decision making. It's literally exactly what we've just been talking about. We've gone from AI and machine learning in compliance to saying, hey, we need to do this in a real-time fashion for compliance, and the same thing that we've been doing in security. And now we need to bring that all together, and we need to take the idea of security, compliance, governance, and turn it into an integrated risk management system. And now we're going to guide the vision, the strategy, and the tactics of an organization from that system. It's fascinatingly full circle. I love it.
And all of that would be coming down from the CDO, correct? Like the strategy and vision of how all of that data is handled, governed, and so on, correct?
Well,
maybe not.
The CDO would be the risk informant. The CDO, he or she would say, here are the risks of doing these 5 different strategies, board, but board, make the decision. or executives make the decision. And the CDO, as an officer, the chief data officer, would be one of the ones to make that decision. But the executive board or the fiduciary board or the executive board as a whole should be the ones making the decisions. Matt, what do you think?
The challenge here is that when you're in a fully integrated risk management system, CDO is just one of multiple roles, because you have to think about CFO from a financial risk perspective. You've got other risk factors in the business. And so every organization is going to probably have different roles. There might be a chief risk officer, there might be a chief compliance officer, the CFO owns aspects of financial risk. So when you talk about truly integrated risk management, we're well beyond just a CDO role, in my opinion, because you've got so many other risk factors that have to be integrated and pulled together. I don't think one executive owns this, but each of the executives need to see the risk components that impact them to make right decisions with the board or with the other executives to move the business forward. And I think that's where things get really complex in a truly integrated risk management framework.
Couldn't agree more. I think that an integrated risk management framework is what we've been sort of leading up to across this entire episode. And I think what's interesting is, as we do these segments about AI/ML, we're going to be leading into how that's going to occur, how that's going to be created, and what functions it will not only create, but enable the organization to do and to perform. It's fascinating to me. I'm sorry, this is really fun.
Which is why we created the show.
What risk does it address in the company as well? Like, how is that risk associated to board metrics, to a PE value? So
quantizing risk, always fun.
Yeah, it's a very difficult juxtaposition.
You love that word. Oh my God, you love that word.
I
you almost never use it right, and for once, you use it correctly. Well done, sir.
All right, so this last art, I got one more I got to cover because Jeff's not here. PCI version 4 is out. Draft review. So
how dare you talk about PCI?
Man, you had to.
How dare you, man?
I said it in the opening that we were probably going to touch on it. But the new data security standard is out for draft review. So all those people have been waiting with bated breath to see what's in PCI version 4. It's out. Go to the PCI Council website. I'm sure you can download it and submit your comments.
Only the key contacts for the QSAs can grab it. So it may be out, and Jeff can probably grab it, but we can't. So sorry.
All right, we'll have Jeff get it, and we'll break it down in a future episode or something.
Absolutely, Jeff will have great glee in doing that. I'm positive. Dear God.
I bet he will.
Remember, every time Jeff says PCI,
we drink.
We drink.
We got to move the show back a little later, so it's not the morning when I do it. So at least I can, say
what
it's
are you,
the
an
afternoon.
amateur day drinker?
Your liver is bad, and you should feel bad. I mean, punish it accordingly.
Yeah.
I when I was flying somewhere, I can't remember where. I think we were going to Hacker Halted, and I said, "Oh, it's noon in the East Coast. I can start drinking." Paul goes, "You work for Security Weekly. You can drink whenever you want." So I don't have to wait.
I can just see Paul going in the airplane bathroom, yanking down the smoke detector and going, I'm walking out with a stogie going, I work for Security Weekly. I can smoke wherever I want.
I can smoke wherever I want.
We've got enough bail money. Why not?
No, we don't.
No, that is not in the budget. Don't
I'm
ever
kidding.
say
That's a joke.
Bail money is not in my financial plan at all. All right, gentlemen.
Wouldn't that fall under the chief risk officer though? Not the CEO's role?
No, everything rolls up to the CEO role in this organization. Okay. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Security and Compliance Weekly.